Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time, as we wrap up Monday, 28th July, 2025. Let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States and China are engaged in high-stakes trade negotiations in Stockholm, led by U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, aiming to advance trade deals before the current truce concludes. Tensions remain in the technology sector, with NVIDIA refraining from showcasing its H20 chip at the World AI Conference in Shanghai, despite prior orders for 300,000 units from TSMC. Cadence Design has admitted to illegally supplying China and paid a fine. China is showcasing its rapid AI development, unveiling 59 AI models at the World AI Conference, WHAM, in Shanghai. Chinese startup Seed AI, formerly Chipu, has launched a new budget-friendly AI model, adding to the competition among Chinese firms vying for AI dominance. China is also advocating for an inclusive AI strategy, aiming to expand its influence and garner support among developing nations. In a shift for retail, Apple is closing one of its retail stores in China, its first such closure within the country. Asian markets present a mixed bag for investors currently. Initial optimism stemmed from the Trump administration trade agreement. Wall Street's record gains also played a role. However, markets later declined. Tariff concerns resurfaced, dampening enthusiasm. Investors are keenly awaiting the outcomes of both China-US trade negotiations and the Federal Reserve meeting. Coal prices in Asia have surged. They are now at their highest point since February. This increase is attributed to heightened demand during the summer heat. Tariffs are projected to significantly impact Chinese exports. Specifically, Chinese exports to the U.S. are expected to decrease by $485 billion by 2027. This decrease will significantly impact China's manufacturing sector. United States and China have reopened trade discussions to ease tariff tensions, possibly leading to a meeting between President Trump and President Wu. The U.S. is also in talks with South Korea regarding agricultural trade as part of ongoing defense discussions. In addition, the U.S. and the European Union have achieved a trade agreement designed to avert a trade war, though some critics feel the EU conceded too much. Turning to Australia, shares declined with the S&P AS 200 dropping 0.42%, impacted by mining and banking sector performance, as well as global market concerns related to U.S.-China trade negotiations. Investors are carefully watching forthcoming inflation figures. Australia's major banks have also commenced a significant refund program for 770,000 customers. Overflowed appointed Harman Fredericks as the new chief financial officer. Returning to the European Union, a trade agreement has been finalized with the United States, intended to prevent a trade war. However, the agreement's terms have drawn criticism, with claims that Brussels made excessive concessions. In China, trade officials have started a fresh round of talks with the United States to de-escalate tariff issues. These discussions could lead to a meeting between President Wu and President Trump. Finally, South Korea is in active discussions with the United States on agricultural trade issues, taking place alongside defense talks. India is experiencing market volatility due to the unfinalized trade deal with the U.S. and subsequent foreign outflows. This has led to Indian stocks nearing a 6-week low, with the Sensex dropping 572 points to close at 24,681, and the India VIX increasing by 7%. Gold and silver prices are climbing in the domestic futures market amid these economic pressures. Conversely, India has overtaken China in smartphone exports to the US, with domestic assembly now comprising 44% of US imports in the second quarter, reflecting a 240% manufacturing surge from the previous year's 13%. Ashish Chauhan predicts that the era of multilateral agreements is ending, and that India will emerge as a key player in the new landscape of bilateral agreements. Russia faces renewed pressure from former US President Donald Trump, who has set a 10 to 12-day deadline for achieving a peace agreement with Ukraine. Trump expressed his disappointment with President Vladimir Putin regarding the protracted conflict. The ultimatum's impact on global oil supplies is a concern, driving steady gains in oil prices. Share prices in the Russian financial sector fluctuated, as observed on July 28, 2025. Aeroflot, the Russian airline, was hit by a cyber attack, leading to the cancellation of over 100 flights. The Russian economy is feeling the strain of war expenditures in Ukraine. The pressures are also impacting Belarus, whose economy is closely linked. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, PIF, has been named the world's most valuable and fastest-growing sovereign wealth fund brand for 2024. The Tadawul All-Share Index in Saudi Arabia experienced a 0.65% decline at the close of trading. National Singaj Industrial intends to float 20% of its shares in an August IPO on the NOMI market. Saudi Arabia's investment portfolio includes a $40 million commitment to a Middle East triathlon series. Veride, a robotaxi company, secured an autonomous driving permit in Saudi Arabia, expanding its operational reach to 6 countries. The country is contemplating raising oil prices for Asian markets in September, potentially marking the second consecutive monthly increase. Conversely, Saudi Arabia is facing criticism for its high execution rate, with over 200 individuals reportedly executed this year, allegedly for drug-related offenses. European Union stocks initially peaked at a 4-month high after the US and EU announced a trade agreement, but closed lower amid a mixed reception. The euro also dipped following the announcement. Investors are now analyzing which European stocks will benefit most from the trade deal. Furthermore, Citadel's Anil Ubaid suggested that European nations issue joint debt, especially as investors seek alternatives to US treasuries, given concerns about our stability. Europe has forged a trade deal with the United States, an effort primarily intended to avert future foreign policy clashes, especially those tied to the ongoing war in Ukraine. The economic impact of the agreement is projected to be modest. In the United Kingdom, industrial stocks are weighing down equities as investors digest the potential effects of the US-EU trade accord. Meanwhile, shareholders of the UK-based fintech firm Wise have approved a plan to move the company's main stock market listing across the Atlantic to the United States. Shifting focus to Ukraine, former President Donald Trump has set a new deadline for Russia to enact a ceasefire, simultaneously voicing his dissatisfaction with Moscow's conduct. Japan's stock market faced headwinds as investors grew wary of corporate earnings forecasts. The Nikkei index reflected this unease. Adding a layer of intrigue, a Japanese artificial intelligence company revealed intentions to allocate $350 towards Bitcoin investments in the coming year. Meanwhile, a substantial $550 billion trade agreement with the United States has ignited discussion. The core of the debate centers around an apparent profit disparity, highlighted by Japan's relatively modest 2% equity stake in the deal. South Africa's rand weakened amid expectations of an interest rate cut and potential U.S. tariffs. However, offshore investors remain net buyers of South African stocks and bonds, and the US $1.90 billion buyout of MultiChoice by Francis Canal has been approved. Severe weather warnings have also been issued. Nah. South Korea has proposed a shipbuilding agreement to finalize a trade deal with the United States and avoid tariffs, leveraging their established partnership. The cryptocurrency SRP is seeing significant trading volume on the South Korean exchange, up bit. Turning to Canada, the S&P TSX Composite Index closed lower, down 0.32%, while leveraged ETFs continue to gain traction. J.P. Morgan Asset Management is also expanding its Canadian presence with a new ETF. Yemen's Houthi rebels are threatening to escalate attacks on merchant ships linked to companies trading with Israeli ports, regardless of the ship's nationality. Meanwhile, Vietnam is celebrating the 25th anniversary of its stock market, and the Swiss ambassador has praised the country's commitment to dialogue, solidarity, and peace, indicating positive relations between Vietnam and Switzerland. In the United States, former President Trump plans to restart trade talks with Thailand and Cambodia. France has voiced strong criticism of the U.S. trade pact, while other EU nations have expressed relief. Germany has warned that a potential trade deal with the U.S. would cause substantial damage. Elsewhere, Israel-based Elbit Systems has entered into a technology agreement with NIBE. Singapore's HPL, owned by billionaire Gong, is considering reducing its stake in a Singapore retail strip. Panama is reportedly seeing G.K. Hutchison seeking a major Chinese investor for its ports deal. Kenya's Nairobi Securities Exchange has seen a significant increase in new listings. Ghana's stock exchange concluded the week with a rally, closing above 6,670 points. Finally, Hong Kong has issued its first black rainstorm warning. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.